So emergency efforts are now being made to prevent Oregon Measure 114 from going into effect, which requires a permit to purchase and also creates a ban on so-called large capacity magazines. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think Oregon Measure 114 clearly violates the Second Amendment, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to give a shout out to one of the main supporters of this channel, which is USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense and liability protection. So if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you take a look into USCCA, and I'll put a link to them down in the details section. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we'll be discussing the current challenges to Oregon Measure 114, which is set to go into effect on December 8th. This measure, which passed in the state of Oregon, creates a purchase permit within the state and also creates a ban on so-called large capacity magazines. In response to Measure 114, the state of Oregon is now being sued in cases like Oregon Firearms Federation, OFF v. Brown, along with various other lawsuits which have now popped up. In this specific case, OFF, the plaintiffs are now seeking a temporary restraining order, an emergency temporary restraining order, which aims to prevent this Measure 114 from going into effect on December 8th. The court is currently set to decide on that TRO, and the judge said that she will try to decide it either on Monday or Tuesday. And again, that is according to the judge at the last hearing. Now, for those not familiar with Oregon Measure 114, let me explain generally what this does. If you want a more comprehensive and nuanced breakdown of Measure 114, you can go watch one of my prior videos. I know some people are commenting in the comment section, well, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this. There's a lot of other things that happen in Measure 114. Just understand this is going to be a broad stroke, general overview of Measure 114. And if you want all the nitty-gritty details, you can go watch one of my prior videos. So first, Measure 114 will require that anyone purchasing a firearm must obtain a permit to purchase. To obtain the permit to purchase, the resident in Oregon will need to complete a safety training course, go through a background check, get fingerprinted, show a valid ID, and only after all of that will they then get a permit to purchase. Under Measure 114, it will generally be unlawful to buy, sell, or transfer any firearms or to sell those items for anyone to buy them if there is not a permit to purchase. And another thing with this is that a permit to purchase will also be required even for private party transfers. To obtain a permit to purchase, you will need to go through your local police chief, your county sheriff, and submit an application. The fee for the application cannot exceed $65, so it's going to be $65 likely. And then if you are granted that permit to purchase, it's only valid for 5 years, and then you will need to renew it, and that will be an additional $50. Now that you have your permit, you will be required to provide that permit whenever you purchase a firearm, and you will have to provide that to the store. Also, it is required that you have a permit to purchase if you are engaging in a private party transfer. The only caveat to that is that if you are doing a transfer to a qualifying individual on the measure, like a spouse, a parent, a child, a sibling, grandparents, etc., if it is a qualifying individual, then a permit to purchase is not required. Now, one thing I want to point out is that under Measure 114, it's not illegal for you to own a gun without a permit, but a permit to purchase will be required for you to be able to purchase any new firearms. However, Measure 114 did not stop with just creating a permit to purchase. The second significant thing that the measure does is it creates a ban on the sale, purchase, transfer, and possession of any so-called large capacity magazine. This measure prohibits the manufacture, importation, possession, use, purchase, sale, or otherwise transfer of magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds. This measure makes the violation of this law a Class A misdemeanor, which is punishable by 364 days in jail and or a fine of $6,250. This magazine ban also applies to any magazine that can be readily converted to accept more than 10 rounds, coupled magazines, belts, drums, feed strips. If you want to know what type of magazines are covered, you just have to go to the definition portion of Measure 114 that talks about what they qualify to be a so-called large capacity magazine. Under this measure, it creates a prospective ban, which is a future ban on all so-called large capacity magazines. Another thing that I want to point out is that this measure has restrictions on how grandfathered magazines can in fact be possessed, used, and transported. So if you are confused about what you can actually do with the grandfathered magazines, you need to look at Measure 114 and see and kind of look at those restrictions that it places on grandfathered magazines. Now, one of the major issues with Measure 114 and this whole permitting scheme is that once it goes into effect on December 8th, it will be next to impossible to even get a permit to purchase under this whole scheme. As written in Measure 114, the process could take up to 30 days to complete, but currently, and we are just a few days away from Measure 114 going into effect, no one in Oregon has a permit, and a permit process is really not even in place to this point. And that is again because there is no structure to support the processing of these permit applications. Even worse, the Oregon State Police, who is required to come up with the whole application, has not even done that yet. What this results in is that come December 8th, if an emergency TRO is not granted by the court, it will be illegal to purchase firearms within the state of Oregon because no one will have a permit to purchase. And really, even if an application exists on December 8th, it's going to take a while for people to even make it through the process. Maybe it could take up to 30 days. So it could look like that maybe in the state of Oregon for a period of time, maybe even up to 30 days, there will be a complete halt on all firearms being sold within the state of Oregon. No firearms will be sold in an entire state. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, at the end of last week, the parties got together and appeared before the court on the request for an emergency TRO. Towards the end of that hearing, the attorney for the state of Oregon, Brian Marshall, told the judge in the case that the state would be ready to issue permits on December 8th, which then resulted in the audience at the courtroom to pretty much erupt into laughter as all the reports. So they completely laughed at this attorney who stated that they would be able to issue these applications come December 8th. Soon after the hearing ended, the Oregon State Police put out a statement reiterating that Measure 114 will become law on December 8th, and they also stated that the applications will be made available on their website to be downloaded come December 8th. They also went on to state that background checks and their whole system has experienced unprecedented volumes of firearms transactions never seen before in the program's 26-year history. That is because everybody is trying to purchase firearms right now, because right now in Oregon, you are facing not being able to purchase firearms for a while come December 8th. Now, U.S. District Court Judge Karen Immergut, I think that's her name, stated that she will aim to decide on the TRO either Monday or Tuesday. However, I do have some concerns based on some of the questions that she asked during the hearing. It appears to me that this judge is still holding on to some of the old interest balancing considerations that the Supreme Court just struck down in Bruin. She asked a lot of questions that rang bells in my head to rationales that the Ninth Circuit en banc panel used in the Duncan v. Bonta California magazine ban case. The judge asked the plaintiffs at the hearing to explain what evidence backed up their arguments that magazines with more than 10 rounds are commonly used in these self-defense situations. She also sought to find out whether or not the plaintiffs believe that the court has authority to regulate any gun or any types of ammunition, including armor-piercing rounds and also machine guns as well. She then confirmed and asked the plaintiffs to confirm whether or not individuals within the state of Oregon could use multiple 10-round magazines if they needed. This all sounded to me like her teeing up some sort of statements that first, that these magazines are not protected arms because they are dangerous and unusual, and therefore not protected by the text of the Second Amendment. That's what it sounds like she was trying to tee up with some of those questions. And also, I suspect some sort of further rationale that people still get to use their grandfather magazines, and also that they can use multiple magazines, multiple 10-round magazines if they needed. Again, these are rationales that we've seen play out in the past at the Ninth Circuit level. The en banc panel used those same type of arguments to justify the state of California's ban on magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. But as for the permitting process and the permitting scheme, I think that's a little bit more in the air. So that is where this issue currently stands. Come Monday or Tuesday, a decision is supposed to hit on that TRO. And if we get any more information, if anything else develops, I will let you all know. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm or fuel Algorit's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet and signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, the station was built by Armed Scholars, and the station will be maintained by Armed Scholars.